Welcome back, everyone. Today I figured we'd work on the roof a little bit. So my bus comes with two escape hatches, these guys here. I don't intend to keep either one of them, but I do want to have one of these available for me to climb out through. So this one in the back is going to be right in front of the rooftop deck. So where I'm standing right now is over the back section. This whole section from that cross member to the back of the bus, which is about 8 feet by 8 feet, is going to be a deck with railing. Now I don't want to have an access point climbing up the back here. I didn't want to put a permanent ladder on the back of the bus. Just worried about the possibility of people or animals attempting to get up through that way. So anyway, I figured let's try to access it from the inside. So what I'm going to use here, this is a marine deck hatch that I'm putting on. Now I know there are a lot of videos out there for installing one of these on the roof of a bus, and I think part of the problems you come across, these are not really designed to take a curved shape. I know when you're talking about like a max air fan, which I'll be dealing with in that front enclosure that's covered by the tarp, those are usually small enough that you can get away with pretty much just putting them on the material that you already have. However, especially working with a hatch this size, it wouldn't be able to seal very well, and I'd have to come up with a bunch of spacers and things to make up the distance on the outside. So what I decided to do instead, this is from Schooly.com. This is one of their frameworks to adapt the curved roof of the bus to the flat surface needed to install this hatch. So the one that I'm using is a 26.6 by 26.6 opening. So that's the size hatch that goes in here. It creates a 2 foot by 2 foot square opening when you have the hatch open. So this should work out pretty well. Basically the way this works, I need to remove the existing escape hatch. So from what I can tell, I don't know what the deal is with these little fasteners down here because they don't seem to be attached to anything. When I feel in the corners over here, I can stick my fingers in underneath and it doesn't seem to be attached. Now maybe the ones in the middle are, but I think my first step is going to be to heat up this old sealant using a heat gun. And once I get it warm enough, I'll try to pry this off with a putty knife and a standard screwdriver. And once we get this out of here, then I'm going to start working on that. Now, I do like that particular enclosure. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to insulate the inside of it still. So we'll see how this looks once it's actually on the bus. But if you notice, it does follow the curve of the roof very nicely. Basically, what you tell them is what body style your bus is, or what body manufacturer more specifically. I guess the roof curve is a little different depending on the company. And then you tell them what size hatch you're putting in here. So I bought the hatch specifically for their largest enclosure, so I know the two will fit together. But I'll show you the hatch after we get this installed. I'm pretty sure this is galvanneal steel, just looking at the kind of grayish appearance of it. And I've also seen several videos or pictures where it looks like people have not even bothered priming it. I'm going to, so I'm going to take it down, get some primer on it, and we'll get working on taking this hatch off. Alright, I absolutely love butyl rubber. I mean, that stuff makes a great seal, but man, is it a pain to get off of there. So, I think I've got most of it up. I'm going to get up here with a wire wheel and clean up the rest of this and see if I can put a little coat of primer down. My hope, up here in the front, you can see where the hat channel is, and there's a line of rivets there right along the edge. I'm hoping I don't have to take those out. I'd love to leave that structurally intact, but we'll have to see how the new framework kind of lays in around that. And my plan is to use the same kind of sealant that I've been using on the rest of my sheet metal work, so kind of a modified silicone for RV use. But I'm hoping it can kind of fill in the gaps, and then that combined with the rivets that'll hold it down should be enough to keep it watertight. But we'll have to see how it goes. I'll have to play with this. I've never done this kind of work before. So hopefully it works out. Let's get this cleaned up. Well, here we are. So I do need to do a little bit of shaping, just kind of around the corners here where it looks like it kind of got bent a little bit in shipping, or maybe didn't have quite the right corner to it. But anyway, it looks good. So what you can tell is for these larger hatches, I'm going to be using the majority of the available space. Now I could consider potentially cutting out that sheet metal a little bit more on the original roof, but I think in this case what I might do is just try to line this edge all the way around up with the edge underneath. I think it's exactly the same size if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to try to use my framing square to get this squared up and centered on the roof. And once I have that, I'll put some marks around it so I know where I need to clean to and get my holes marked and drilled. But the nice part about it, that front rivet line up there is actually going to end up just in front of the original rivets for the hat channel. So a little further forward than I thought it was going to be. I could potentially bring it back a little bit, but that would mean cutting out a portion of this back edge. And I don't know that I want to do that. This should give me the ability to fill everything with spray foam and then put a nice piece of trim all the way up the inside to the hatch. I may need to open up these corners a little bit. But let me see about getting this straight, and we'll go from there. Well, we got all the holes drilled. I might need to ream a few of these out a little bit. I think it might have slid some when I was making my marks, but that's okay, they're close, and it'll work out. So I've got a bunch of rivets in my pocket. I'm going to put a couple lines of sealant on the flange of this. So, like I said, what I'm using is this ProFlex RV, the flexible sealant. So, I'll put a line outside of the rivets and a line inside of the rivets, or, I don't know, at least a line around each hole, and kind of run some sealant down the sides. I think the two areas that are going to be probably the hardest to seal are the two edges, so along this flange and along this flange. Just because, I don't know if you can see it, but the roof kind of has a little bit of a bow in it there. I think that's just because it's sheet metal and there's nothing holding it still, and I'm pretty sure that when I put the rivets in it'll pull it up tight against the flange, but I just want to make sure I have some extra sealant in there to make sure there's not a water gap of any kind. So let's get this squared away, we'll get it put down, and get this thing installed. There we have it. So I've got all the rivets in place. I went ahead and put another bead of sealant around the outside, and I put one along the inside of the framework as well. So I've got the equivalent of 4 lines of sealant going along each flange, so I should be pretty well watertight. I will come back and put a set of self-leveling lap sealant over the top of this just to seal up the rivet, since I'm using a rivet that doesn't have a closed end on the bottom of it. But it should be fine, and even on this side where it's kind of sitting up on that rivet line, I've got plenty of sealant on there. I should be okay. So let's go open up the hatch and we'll see what we need to do to install that. There we go. So this hatch is from Gaia Marine. I got it off Amazon. And I went ahead and bought mine with the optional screen and shade combination. Costs a little bit more, but I kind of like the idea of being able to put a screen up when I just have this open. you're enjoying all the noise, make sure to tape this down well. Let me see about getting it opened up. There we are. So this one did not come with any hardware from what I can tell, but I've got some leftover self-tapping screws that were originally designed for the flasher deletes that I put into the bus. So I should have plenty of those left to be able to take care of this. So this one is supposed to be quite thick. Should be able to handle pretty much any storm. We've got a good seal around the inside here. This is a great gasket, and it looks like it sits on top of this flange up here. So it does overhang the mounts. So the mounting screws on this flange will be overhung by the hatch when it's closed, so that's good. But again, I'm going to go ahead and put some extra sealant on top of these when I put them in. So I think, let's get this up on the roof and see how it fits into the hole. Well, there we have it. So this is just a trial fit so far. I do need to finish things up underneath, and I need to actually put the sealant in and get it locked down. But for now, I like the way it fits. When you're putting in a hatch on your roof, make sure you pay attention to where your hinge is and where you want it to be. In my case, I'm going to have all of my hatches with the hinge facing forward. Granted, I don't intend to open this one when I'm driving. The front hatch is going to be a max air fan. It's going to have the cover on it so I can open it while moving. But in this case, the biggest reason I'm doing it this way is because the deck's going to be back there. So I want to be able to open this up and then climb out toward the deck. I wouldn't want to have the hatch standing up right against that point. I could put it in sideways, but I think this way I like more. I'm just realizing something here that I may need to pay attention to. Ah, good. Okay. So, these guys turn, but they do not open the hatch from what I can tell. I need to check that really closely and make sure that's true, but I believe they don't open the hatch, so that's good. I didn't want people to be able to climb in from the roof. So anyway, I need to open this up, get to the flange underneath. I've got these leftover fasteners that I think I can use here. Granted, it would be nice if I had some pan heads, so I might not use this. I might see about getting some other self-tappers. But anyway, we're getting closer, and I think pretty soon I should have this finished. Next step on the installation, I'm just going to put down some butyl rubber. This stuff I'm going to run right around here along the opening. Since the flange sits really close to it, I do need to kind of work my way around these corners here a little bit, but it should be fine. So let me get that down, and then we'll put the hatch back in place. Okay, there's our butyl tape in place. I went ahead and put a little bit extra across the corners here, just because I couldn't really get it to kind of turn the corner the way I wanted it to. So we got a little bit extra here that should be fine under the flange. I did that on all four corners. I'll go ahead and push the rest of this down, but when I seat it, it should be fine. So I'm going to lay the hatch back in place and then go ahead and get going with the self-tapping screws. Just go straight through the butyl. I've got some lap core on the way for putting over the top of it, but I think we'll be fine. And I think we got it. I'm going to come back in a day or two and clean up the leftover putty and sealant, but for now I want this to just kind of sit and dry and settle in. So here's what we have. Here's the Schooly.com adapter housing. So this one works out really nicely. I do think there's a little bit of variability in the curve of the roof, even within the manufacturer that you have, because I noticed with mine it wasn't a perfect fit, but it was really close. So definitely enough that I could make up the difference with sealant and rivets. Then up on top here, we've got our hatch. Go ahead and push that all the way up and lock this in place. There we go. So this is really solid. I really like it. Basically, I just put a single layer of butyl rubber along the entirety of it, down underneath the flange here. You can see some of it sticking out in a few places. I added some extra around the corners because I knew I wasn't going to have a screw actually going through here. I suppose I could put one in if I really wanted to, but I think it's going to work out fine as is. So I do have some extra squeeze out around the edges here I need to get rid of at some point. And like I said, I'll come back later and put in a layer of lap sealant over the top of this just to make sure it's a nice seal. And same thing down here. I'm probably going to go ahead and put some seam tape over the top of these rivet lines as well. But yeah, I think this is going to do the trick. So I really like the way this is turning out. Sorry about the noise of the metal. But definitely something I can climb through, and I still haven't fully decided what I'm going to do with the sheet metal underneath. So as we look down in here, you can see it's a pretty close fit, but these edges are a little bit smaller. I don't think it's going to be a problem, and I can definitely fit through here. That's not an issue. So I think we'll be fine. But I'll try to leave this as is, and we'll go ahead and put it down. So I did find out that there's a little switch you can flip on the inside that I think will lock these into position so you can actually open this from the outside. Or if you want to leave it to where they don't turn the latches, then you can do it that way too. So anyway, I like it that way. That way I know nobody's going to get in from the outside. But yeah, there's what we have. So one hatch down. Up front, it'll be a max air fan in place of the other one, and I've got just a flat plate to put on the roof instead of this housing up front. So I'll see you over the next horizon.